creeps! Andy here, and today we've got our July reading wrap up. Look at that, not even a month late. So today, you guys know the drill, we're gonna be talking about the books that I read this month. Surprisingly, not a lot of horror. I read mostly fiction and thriller this month. So let's begin with the first guy that we've got. The first one I read was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this, but Moshfegh? I don't know. You guys let me know. But I really enjoyed this one. So this was about a young woman. She lives in New York City and she has a friend that she's kind of a jerk to. And her idea, honestly, the whole point of this book, all of it, is that she wants to rest for a year. So she wants to find a way to sleep through an entire year and not have to deal with anything and just sleep. And that's what the book is. So it is, as you can imagine, quite a slow burn, kind of a weird concept for a story, but I really enjoyed it. She has lost both of her parents and her friend has lost her mother recently. Her family is very financially stable, but there is no love there. Whereas her friend's family, there's a lot of love between them, but they don't have a lot of money. So it's very different kind of experiences with grief, especially because her friend is very close to her parents, whereas our main character really wasn't. It's interesting because a lot of the times with main characters like this, because she is just such an a-hole to her friends, and she just doesn't really care, or it seems that way. And so sometimes I feel like with these characters, it can be hard to connect with them. But for me personally, I really liked the main character and almost felt sorry for her in a lot of ways. She seems heartless, but she certainly is a product of her raise. And I don't know that she's fully at fault for the person that she's become. And I was telling this to my husband, I'm like, yeah, it's about this girl who's she can't sleep and she just wants to sleep for a whole year, and her, her insomnia is really bad. And he's like, is it written about you? I'm like, yeah, and both her parents are dead. And he's like, oh my gosh. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I related to it a lot in that regard, thinking over the last decade and being like, yeah, I could take a year after all of that shit and just sleep for a year and then restart life over. It's like someone who's just overwhelmed with grief. And also, I know that sometimes losing parents that you're not particularly close to can almost be harder in some ways than losing parents that you are closer to. I've had experiences with each of those. No parent loss is easy. You get what I'm saying. But sometimes it is those relationships that are almost more challenging to grieve, because it's not it's so much more complex than just missing someone who was once part of your life. And so with this girl, you have both of her parents, and both of her parents are kind of these weird figures in her life. I don't know if they've ever really been parental figures for her. And so it is really an interesting outlook on grief, and more so a person dealing with their own, how can I say this? What I'm trying to say is typically with books about grief, it's I miss them so bad, this hurts because they're gone, etc. With this book, it was more the person's internal feelings and how she feels about herself and her life and her friends, and just kind of wanting to flip the switch and restart all of that and kind of leave the past behind. That's at least my interpretation of the book. I mean, obviously all of this is just my interpretation of how I feel about these things, but I really enjoyed this. I thought that it was quite an interesting novel. I liked the way that it was written. Again, super slow burn. It's a little weird, but kind of right up my alley. So yeah, I don't know who to recommend this to. But if you want something weird, maybe even if you've lost someone, I don't know. The relationship between the two girls is interesting. Her relationship kind of with the world is so interesting. And her character in general, I certainly don't connect to that character, but I do connect with what she's going through and how she's feeling in certain aspects, not fully, because like I said, she's kind of an a-hole. But anyways, okay, so I read that guy, absolutely loved it. I'm like, good start to the month. And then the next book that I read was this guy, Flag Cake and Felonies. And I think last month I told you guys that this was the cozy mystery I read last month was the best one. It was this one. I'm so stupid. It was this one. I don't even remember the difference between the two, but this was the one that had those additional characters from the other story that Addison Moore writes, the crossover series. That's what this one was. So apologies for getting them confused. That's what happens when I make a video a month late. But this was the one that I really, really enjoyed. It's my cozy mystery. You know, there's a murder. She tries to solve it. And in this one, we had a lot of additional characters. And like I said last time, they were characters who knew Lottie Lemon's secret, that she can talk to ghosts, and helped along with the investigation. And they had their own kind of abilities as well, which is very different from these books. Typically, she tries to hide her abilities from everyone. And it was kind of just fun to see a different take on the story and see other people involved and see like where the story could go if they had other characters kind of like Lottie. So anyways, I read that one. The next one that I read was My Husband by Maud Ventura. Okay, so this one is about this woman and she's got some issues, okay? She's always overanalyzing every aspect of her relationship with her husband, and it is interesting because it is her job too. She analyzes texts and then translates them, and you have to be like very into the text. I mean, I don't know if you guys like have ever translated or interpreted anything, but it's like, it's very tedious work and you have to know the intent of the author, and it's a lot more than just a word for word swap, you know what I mean? And so she has to find literal meanings of things and look deeper. And so I thought that that was quite an interesting job for her to have, being so overly analytical. But at her home life with her husband, it's kind of crazy stuff. Like they'll go out to a restaurant and she'll be like, why did he order lasagna? He never orders lasagna. It must mean he doesn't love me. Why did he drop my hand? It must mean like she's got some problems, okay? Then she punishes him accordingly. So she'll leave off her wedding ring for the night if he upsets her, or she plays mind games with him, or she just does little things to like try to get under his skin if he's gotten under hers. And it's just like a very toxic, weird relationship that her and her husband have. They also have 2 children. The husband doesn't have a name in the book because she prefers to call him my husband, like she owns him. It's such a weird story and such an icky character. She's got some problems. But it does explore power dynamics in marriage, which I found really interesting. There were a lot of things that I really, really, really did like about this book, and I believe that this is the first novel from this author, which is super impressive. Love as a topic in general with this book is also kind of interesting to interpret. It's mentioned that she's still in the obsessive honeymoon phase and hasn't moved into really like that marriage life. And it's brought up by someone else saying like, well, doesn't that mean that you don't love him at all? So just love as a concept, and like I said, the power dynamics between men and women is really interesting. This character is really interesting. She's vain. She lacks a lot as a parental figure, and she's like I said, overly analytical, but also very judgmental. Though I do feel for her in certain ways, like the anxiety and the overanalyzing and things like that. Like there are, I think, qualities that maybe people could find connections with in this character, although I think reading it overall, you're like, okay, you're just nuts. But you do feel her anxiety and you do feel for her because of it. She says things like, I love our children, but I would rather not have had them. Ugh. You're like walking this tight line with her where you go, okay, I see where you're feeling. I see where you're feeling overly anxious, and I can feel sorry for her in that regard. But she also has so many flaws that at the end of the day, you're just like, this bitch is crazy. She also says, I can say with certainty that I could survive the death of one of my children, but not the death of my husband. It's an interesting meditation on marriage as well, kind of like revolving your entire life, your entire being around your spouse, as opposed to having an identity of your own, and what is perhaps in some ways expected of women in marriage. There's some things where she's like trying to follow these magazines that tell you how to behave and what to do and how to dress, and so there are certainly some societal expectations at play in this book as well. And I do understand her anxieties about the marriage becoming stagnant and her worries about that. However, that's also the beauty of marriage, and I feel like she really is kind of missing the entire point of marriage and slipping into like that comfortable place with someone that you've been with for so long. And I think that they had been together for like a decade in the book. I can't remember exactly, but like, you know, my husband and I have been together 13 years. There's no way or reason that your relationship should feel the same as when it's in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like everything evolves and changes, and that's kind of the beauty of marriage, is because it's not like dating. It's something completely different. And so yeah, she kind of is so obsessed with him, but she also misses the point of marriage and misses the point of love in a lot of regards, and it's very odd. Oh yeah, she has a skewed sense of love where money equates to love, but sleeping with someone else isn't cheating. So she's just all over the place. Sometimes, like I said, you can feel for her and kind of understand where she's coming from, and then sometimes you're like, this woman is an absolute lunatic. The character was quite interesting. I did love her overanalyzing everything and seeing all the layers that the author put into this book and how she treats and manipulates and punishes her husband. However, I did find the ending to be a little predictable. Like I kind of had a feeling that's how things were going. And also, I would say that this one too is kind of a slow burn, and it's just kind of her going about her daily life and her routines. And it is very interesting to see her as a character. However, about halfway through the book, I started getting a little bit less interested in the character. Now, I don't know if it's because I read this on Kindle, and I'm trying to do experiments to see if reading on Kindle makes me feel differently about the text than having a physical book would. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm very curious if I had this in paperback, if I would feel a little bit differently about it. But I will say that halfway through the book, I wasn't as invested because I felt like it was maybe a little bit repetitive, although I know that's the point of the story, but I just was a little bit less excited to pick up the book, where the first half I was like, what's gonna happen next? What's going on? This bitch is crazy. And then the second half, I'm like, yeah, I already know she's crazy. Yeah, that's what I'll say with that one. Overall, entertaining book, still really enjoyed it. Okay, next I read The Guest by B.A. Paris. This book was not for me. I'm just gonna say that. This one is about a husband and wife. They live together. They have a guest who comes and stays with them because her husband, they're friends. They've been friends for a long time. Her husband just came out and told her that he has had a child out of wedlock, like out of their marriage. So he's cheated on her and had a child with someone else. So she's like in shambles, comes and lives with this family, but she for sure overstays her welcome. There's so many weird decisions that are made in this book. Like, I understand helping out a friend, but if somebody came and was like, hey, I'm gonna crash on your couch for 3 months, I'd be like, fuck you are. No way in hell, dude. Get yourself a job and go rent a place of your own. Like, there's just no way, you know? And I'm talking like, obviously, an adult that's in a situation where they can provide for themselves. There was nothing wrong with her. She was just upset that her husband had cheated on her. But that's, I feel like, maybe not unreasonable. I'm sure there are people who would let her stay, but she does continually kind of create a divide between the husband and wife characters, and they both get kind of irritated at her in different regards. And so it was very interesting to me that these characters just let that happen. And I was thinking, like, I can understand one, maybe, I don't know. I'm a pushover. Maybe someone could do that to me. There was no way in hell my husband would let that happen. And if he saw I was getting annoyed with someone, he would be like, it's time to leave, you know? So just some weird things about the plot. This one, again, super slow burn. Really nothing happens throughout the book until like the last maybe 50 pages. And oh my gosh, you guys, this is, for me personally, this is what I think a stereotypical thriller book is. Like, this is kind of the story. This is the reason I don't like thrillers. What I mean by that is this is kind of a representation of why I don't love the thriller genre as a whole. The plot holes in this were absurd. Like, I do not understand how anybody could read this and not be like, none of this makes sense. To me, the ending was so unrealistic, so unfathomable. I had so many questions that didn't make sense. I will say it wasn't predictable, which is great and usually my gripe with thrillers. But the other gripe I have with thrillers is I just feel like it's a genre that people read to be entertained and not really have to think. So like if you think too hard about a lot of like these popular thrillers, I feel like you see plot holes or or it's very obvious or things don't quite add up. And it's just strange to me that thrillers are so widely accepted. And like, no hate to this author. Actually, this was the book for our girls' book club. And the girl who picked this book really likes this author, and she even said this is her least favorite book by her. So I have another book I'll try out. I'll try her again. I'm sure she's a wonderful author for people who love thrillers. I don't love thrillers. The genre as a whole, I think, has a lot of issues. There are some amazing thriller books, but I feel like there's so many thriller books that are written that you kind of have to wade through the mediocre ones to get to the really great ones. And that's what I would say this is. It's like a very, very basic, mediocre thriller book, just to me personally. But yeah, the ending, I was like, wow, how does that make any sense? I wish I could just tell you guys so you can... Have you guys read this? Please tell me somebody has read this, and please tell me that the ending you were like, what is happening? Very strange ending. Next, I read Felines and Fatalities. So I was telling you that this was a crossover between the other book, The Country Cottage Mysteries. So then I was like, well, I'm gonna go back and read the crossover with that one, so see where Lottie Lemon, so it was the book before this where Lottie Lemon went there and met them. And I thought because I loved this one that I would love that one, and it turns out I don't. So I don't know if I'm just not a fan of cozy mysteries in general, if I just like the Lottie Lemon series, or if maybe I didn't like this one because it was like a Lottie Lemon wannabe, you know, because it's the same writer, some of the same taglines she said like Lottie. There were just some similarities, but without the cute three ring, oh my god, what do you call that? Love triangle. Holy holy crap. So this one was just about a group of friends that live by a cape somewhere, and they run an inn, and there's a murder, and Lottie helps them solve it. But it was fine, but it just wasn't as good, I feel like, as the Murder in the Mix series. Okay, next up we read When the Wolves Come Home by Nat Cassidy. This one was really interesting. Everyone seemed to enjoy this one to some capacity in our book club pick of the month, and it seemed like most people really enjoyed this one. This is about a woman who's working kind of a shitty dead-end job. She comes home one night after one particularly hard day and finds a young boy in the bushes, and then this werewolf starts to jump out and attack and kill everyone, so she takes the boy and hits the road. And then she soon finds out that there's more to the boy and the story than she had planned. I don't want to give too much away because this one was such a weird read, and if you would come to me and tell me what this book was about, I would be like, oh, that's probably not for me. But it really is a cute story. It was honestly just a really interesting story about dealing with grief and kind of having the same coping mechanisms as your parents and working through being a product of someone that you're not very proud to be from. There's a lot of like fairy tale-esque stuff thrown throughout here. There's also some concepts like drugs or alcoholism or anger being handed down from child to parent, and like the anxiety and trauma of dealing with those things at such a young age. The relationship between the young woman and the young woman and the young boy is actually really interesting when you analyze their situations and kind of what they're dealing with. And also the other characters in the book too, like they're all there kind of for a reason. And there are some parts in this book that I was like, oh damn, this book shocked me. It did. There were some parts where I'm like, where are we going with this? What the heck is happening? And then by the end, I really fell in love with it. And I think talking about it on book club made me rate it even higher. I think I ended up rating this one a 4.25. But yeah, just daddy issues. The usual. I think the first chapter is called Dads Are Motherfuckers or something, and I opened it and I just started laughing. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a good book. Oh, and also I think it's about the difficulty of parenting as well and overcoming your fears. So yeah, loved that one. I thought it was quite cute. Next, I read She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. This is a book of short stories, which sometimes I feel like it's a little bit difficult to get a grasp for the writer when you're just reading little bits and pieces of their stories. So what I'll say is I found some of these really entertaining. Some of them, this is just in the fiction section, so it's not a horror book, but some of them are kind of sci-fi-y. Some of them are strange and weird. The back here says, a woman welcomes a parasite into her body, a teenager longs for perfect skin, a scientist tends to fragile alien flora, and a young man takes the night into his own hands. So you do have kind of interesting stories, and a lot of them do revolve around hunger in some capacity. So I did find it interesting. The only thing I'll say about this one is that for me, the stories didn't feel like they ended, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it means that I wanted more of the stories, and so I'm really interested to read a full-length novel from this writer to see how I feel versus the short stories. Next, I read Lisa Jewell's Don't Let Him In. This is her new book. You guys know I love Lisa Jewell. I adore her. Somebody left a comment, I think I've already told you this, but that said, Lisa Jewell books don't feel like thriller books, and I think that's why I like them. I think that's maybe why I like them more than typical thrillers, is because, yeah, they're probably not your average thriller books. They're usually, sorry, I just ran up and down the stairs, out of breath. Let me close this so my neighbors can't see me talking to myself and think that I'm crazy. But let's get some light in here. Yeah. Her novels usually deal with multiple timelines, multiple characters, multiple storylines, and then they all kind of converge and come together in this one story. Some of them are more thrillers than others, you know? But anyways, this guy right here, this was an infuriating read. So basically it's just about this man that manipulates women and takes their money and treats them great, kind of love bombs them so they feel safe with him, and then he kind of ditches them and moves on to the next one. So it is really infuriating to read. Let me make sure I'm not giving anything away. The only thing that the description tells you is that this family, the husband has just passed away, the mom starts dating someone new, and the daughter doesn't quite like the man. He's very charming, very handsome, he dresses very well, he's very tall and kind, but she just feels something off about him. And then you have a florist in a nearby town, and she feels like something's off with her husband. And then it says that the two stories collide. But I guess what I'll say is, like, a lot of this book, it seemed like, who would be okay with this? Or who would be a victim like this? But I know that this does happen, and I know, like, especially in the woman's marriage in the story, that things change slowly, and it would be difficult to see someone that you've loved and been with for years, to see that things are changing and that you're becoming unhappy. So it's very annoying and it's very frustrating, but I know that this is like a thing that happens. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit of a slow burn. I will say it took me a minute to get into this one. Although there are multiple timelines, there's not really multiple storylines like her typical book. So before, she will have 3 solid stories kind of going their separate ways, and then eventually come back to connect in this place. In this story, it wasn't really like that. Like, you know where it's going, you know what's happening. You're following like a pretty linear path, and you get an idea very quickly of what's going on. And so there's not really any big surprises or anything like that. This one, super slow burn. Like, it was just very mild thriller. It wasn't anything crazy, and it was fine. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still a well-written story, but I will say that typically Lisa Jewell books blow me away. This one didn't blow me away, it was just entertaining to read. Next, I read The Cotton Candy Massacre. This is by Christopher Robertson. So this is the writer of Sewer Sharks. You guys know I'm obsessed with Sewer Sharks. I fucking love that book. I love it. This one is about a group of friends who go to, it's not even really like a circus. I guess it kind of is, but it's also kind of like a circus amusement park kind of thing. The back doesn't really tell you too much, but there's a massacre There, I think that's safe to say. So it feels like a script when you're reading it. There's like split screens and stuff like that, which does make it kind of fun to be split between two characters and see two things play out at the same time. I thought that that was pretty fun. This one's still, again, a bit slow. It's probably about 100 pages till you get to the actual massacre, which is a long time to spend on character development for a story like this. And don't get me wrong, it's a fun storyline. It's like reading a campy 80s horror film, like in book form. And I think that's exactly what the writer was going for. There's really original, fun, bloody scenes in here as well, where you're reading and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so funny, or that's so silly, or that's pretty gross. There's a lot that goes on in here. And if you want clowns that explode into glitter, and clown sharks, and baby clowns that jump rope with intestines of other people, then this book is for you. The only thing I'll say is there are funny parts, there are parts that I laughed at, but I think for me it was a little long. I think it was fun and kind of exactly what I imagined this book being, but for me this is like a solid 3.5-star book. Just like it was fun, you know? But Sewer Sharks, I rated that one a 4. So this one, because I didn't love it as much, I rated it a little bit less. I feel like Sewer Sharks was just, the pacing was perfect. There was enough character development, but not too much, because it's just like, at the end of the day, kind of like a silly story. So I don't know for me personally if I needed 100 pages of character development until we got into the massacre, but I still did enjoy it and I still did think it was fun. Lastly, the last book that I read was called Night and Day in Misery. This is by Catriona Ward. Catriona? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is just a really quick short story. Actually, it was my first introduction to the writer. It's not like fully horror story. It's much more heartfelt, but I thought it was beautifully written. It's about this woman who goes to stay at... I don't want to give it all away, actually, because it's really short. Let me see what the description says before I say anything. She's going back to stay in this hotel after her husband and her son passed away like 8 years before and stayed in that same hotel. She starts seeing weird things and having weird dreams, but it is more of like a heartfelt story than like a horror book. But I thought it was very beautifully written and I really liked it so much that that night I ended up buying a book from that same author that you guys had actually recommended me, so I'm reading that now. So more from this author in the future, in next month when we talk about that book. But yeah, I thought that this was a good one, a nice little short story to read, just a sad, more sad than anything. But anyways, yeah, so that's what I read this month. Not a crazy amount of horror and a lot of just like decent books. My highest rated for the month I think was actually When the Wolves Come Home. This was a close second. The Year of Rest and Relaxation, this was a 4.25. I think I rated this guy a 4. So yeah, other than that, I think everything was mostly in the 3 range for me, like 3.5 to 3.8 range for me for most of these other books. Oh, and my lowest rated book was The Guest by B.A. Paris. That one was a little bit lower, maybe like a 2-star for me. Sorry. I'm sure the author is wonderful. That one just personally wasn't for me. But anyways, let me know what you guys read this month, your favorites and least favorites of the month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys.